the answer is sort of. Okay. Now, this is not the better product. There's a better product for that.
There's another, I'm sorry. There's another question that Ricardo and I think that Juan and Guillermo asked. Argentina. Is Argentina covered?
Yes.
Today?
Yes.
After all.
Maybe not tomorrow. Today. No. We have on our website. We have something called the country limitation schedule, which shows all the countries that we are open in. And every country that we are open in for medium term, if there's some resemblance of a leasing law, we can probably structure something. There are a few countries that, I mean, it's just so difficult to do any type of leasing because there just isn't any law. But that's really not Latin America. It's more of some of the Asian, Eastern European countries. They're just not there yet. And all the Kazakhstans and Uzbekistans and all those places. Difficult to do business there. But for Latin America, in the countries that we are open, the leasing laws are perfectly fine. And I'll kind of go over a little bit of how all that works with EXIM. Who's an eligible lessor with EXIM? It's a U.S. entity on a cross-border lease, a host country. Those are the ones we actually prefer, are working with leasing companies in country because you know your clients. And you know who's going to pay, you know who's generally not going to pay. So the entities that can have an MGA is a financial institution. Most of our intercreditor agreements, MGAs, are with financial institutions. We have a few leasing companies, and I mean, RN is a perfect example, CSI, that are pure leasing companies that we do business with. The captive leasing companies, we have the Navistars, the GEs, the John Deere's, several of the other larger captive finance companies that do leasing have the lease MGA with us. They cannot be a supplier credit. It doesn't really affect anybody in this room. What that means is, like, if you're a business and you want to do a lease as a business to another business and you're not a lessor, we're not going to do it. We have another product that will cover that. The provisions of the master guarantee agreement are very common of what you're going to see with most intercreditor agreements with any financial institution. The payment of the rents have to be unconditional. They cannot sublease, sell, create liens on the items financed. Again, net leases only. The termination value, lessee must pay the amount if defaults or asset is destroyed. And this last bullet is really the important structure, because EXIM Bank's a U.S.-based entity. We know U.S. leasing laws. We really don't know the local leasing laws. So what we do is we work with your lease agreement. We have a few little caveats that need to be added to it to make it compliant with what EXIM Bank does. And then we get a legal opinion from your counsel that this lease is enforceable in your country. Generally, we'll re-look at the opinion letter about every 3 years. And I use the word about. If the country's been very stable and there haven't been many changes in the financial laws, we'll probably extend that. If it's a country, I'd like to pick on Argentina, if the laws are changing every week, probably going to want more opinion letters sooner than later. So they might be a little bit more shorter time on that. But generally what we've been finding is 3 years has been about the norm. EXIM Bank will underwrite the credits. We do the approval of the credit because we are working with you. We are the people that are ultimately taking all of the risk. So what we're going to ask you to do is to put together a financial package. The information we ask is identical to the information that you're asking. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, we want to see financial statements, credit reports, bank references. It can be your own reference if you have business with them. Due diligence site visit report. Again, this is where we're really, really relying on you to know your customer. We don't know your customer. If it's a mid-size or a smaller firm, we don't know them. We're relying on you to know the customer. And again, the final credit decision is done by EXIM Bank. And here is kind of this particular point is the most important part of the whole process here is once you've been approved by EXIM Bank on these lease with the lease MGA, All of this paper is sellable through capital markets, through a sister organization we have that is called PEFCO. PEFCO will sign an agreement with you to purchase all your Ex-Im Bank secured paper. Their current purchasing right now is running about, if it's a floating rate lease, it's LIBOR plus 100 basis points. Very inexpensive financing. If it's a fixed rate lease, it's going to be the equivalent treasury maturity plus 250 basis points. That is very, very inexpensive money. Very expensive. And they are hungry. They are looking to buy paper. They're constantly talking to us about, whenever I do these presentations and have an interest from a lessor, can we meet with them? So they are very interested in doing business with you to sell off all this paper. That's one of the reasons why it's good to deal with Ex-Im Bank through the lease guarantee portion, is because it gives you access to virtually unlimited capital. I mean, it's virtually unlimited. PEFCO buys all the big aircraft deals in the billions and billions of dollars from the banks that use Ex-Im Bank. So whatever you all can do in the form of leasing, they have capacity to buy it. There's a few restrictions. By charter, the U.S. Congress that created us told us we cannot support military items. And it's military exports, actually. So any item that is going to a military operation overseas, pretty difficult for us to do a lease with. If you have one that's kind of unusual, for example, patrol boats for drug interdiction, yes, we can work on those, but it's going to take some time. The most important part here on this screen is the reason why Export-Import Bank exists is to create and maintain U.S. jobs. How do we measure that? Through a foreign content or a U.S. content requirement. Any item that we finance has to have a made in the USA label on it. If it's coming from Europe or China or India, we cannot finance it. It's got to be American-made goods and services. There's a whole bunch of caveats and nuances to it that I don't want to cover here, but basically just keep in mind, the CAT, the Navistar, if they make it here, it's financeable. And the items need to be shipped from the United States. If the item's already been in country and it's just a release, no. We're trying to create jobs in this country, we're trying to stimulate the economy. So it's important that the products leave the United States. How do you apply for a lease MGA? It's pretty simple. We're going to ask you for a set of information, just like all of you that have bank lines. It's virtually the same type of information that we're going to ask of you to see if we want to and can do business with you. What kind of institution you are, what's your structure, what's your business activities, ownership. We're going to want to see your audited financial statement.